Does it, can you see the presentation?
Not now.
Not now. Now? Yeah, I don't know why it's not letting me do this. Okay, so let me just start out by prefacing that, well, let me introduce myself. Charles Dotson, first semester MFE. I'm gonna be presenting one of the projects I'm working on. I came up with it. I gave the proposal for it, so we started working on it. We got a corporate sponsor who's been a ton of help because this idea kind of was really out there. I didn't have any footing. I didn't know where to start, but I had the idea, and the corporate sponsor really helped narrow down, like, all right, what are we going to use? How are we going to do this? What is the best strategy to move forward? And yeah, so basically that's how I wanted to preface it. But now the good thing is I don't have much to present, but now we at least have the footing, a timeline, and what to do, what to study, what to research, and how we're going to be going about this. And basically, that's what I'm going to be talking about today, is the goal of the capstone, the tools being used, the timeline of the research that's been done, and the research to be completed within the coming year for the capstone. So the goal of this capstone is to model asset prices as waves. The first inclination I had of this is growing up in California. Southern California, you grow up going to beaches a lot. So there's this one beach that I grew up by, and it's a cove, and I was on one side of the cove and I was watching the waves break. And if you drew a line of the waves, you would see that it sometimes, you could say, looks like an asset price, a graph of the time series of an asset price. So that was the first inclination. And, a few years later, I get my undergraduate. As I'm graduating, I have the idea to model asset prices as waves based on that first inclination. And the logic and assumptions behind this is that at times prices act wave-like. This can be better discussed after a little discussion on the tools being used. The tools that we're going to be using and trying to implement for this model are the Hurst Exponent. That is a terrible name that every time I present, I don't even like to say it, but we're just going to abbreviate it, is the Lppls model, and toroidal wave models. So a little introduction to the Lppls so I can discuss the logic and the assumptions behind it. Let me zoom in a little bit. So just so you, oh no, that's not what I wanted. Sorry about that. Basically, the Lppls model was developed by Sornet and company. A lot of research is going in it today for the viability of predicting market crashes. Now, why is this interesting? Everyone refers to the market crash as a bubble. But what the Lppls does is it looks, as you can see on that graph, from a critical time TC and a beginning date of when you're starting to measure the time series. It's measuring when this bubble is going to crash, right? Basically, it's measuring when super exponential growth is unsustainable and when it will stop. So instead of looking at it like a bubble crashing, like we can see in that graph right there, we're going to think about it as measuring when a wave will crash, right? Because if you're looking at an ocean wave, you're going to be looking at the wave. The wave is actually going to rise as the seafloor, the gradient of the seafloor rises. And then it'll reach at a critical time TC a value that wave cannot hold, and it will spill over itself, just like an ocean wave. So that's basically what we're looking behind with the Lppls, not necessarily a bubble, but a wave. Now, the reason why we're going to be including the Hurst Exponent is kind of twofold. The Hurst Exponent is what you're seeing with that graph right there, actually, is from a research paper basically saying that pair trades shouldn't use correlation or distance. They should use the Hurst, because in this research paper, they basically use the Hurst value. And as you can see, it has a better return than the two usual suspects for pair trading strategies, which are correlation and distance. But basically, a quick synopsis of the Hurst Exponent. The Hurst Exponent is just basically what it tells you, it gives you a score for a time series that explains the movement of the time series, whether it's mean reverting, geometric Brownian motion, or trending, right? So if we're going to use the Hurst exponent, we're going to try and find a wave. Well, if a wave is rising, that should be trending. So if we're looking at a time series for an asset, where we got the price, we got the dates, the asset price, say the asset price is a mean reverting, right? It's been mean reverting for a while, or it's been geometric Brownian motion. And then say we start getting more and more scores that are trending. Well, okay, now we have a signal that can tell us that a wave is rising. And then we can deploy the Lppls model. And I don't know if you can see, but there's a power component within the Lppls model, to where basically we're going to be using the Hurst exponent that we're calculating as the power component within the Lppls model. Now, at the behest of the corporate sponsor, he believes that there is the Lppls model acts wave-like already. And basically, to describe it, we're going to be including some of the factors from actual wave models, right? So this blurry little image right here, I was trying to get the text from it, but basically what that is saying is it's a simple wave model, and we're going to be using the two factors within that to then show to then add to the Lppls model with the Hurst exponent. All that says, though, is that there are simple rules that you can use. The one right here basically says that the peak of a wave can only be 120. It has to have a minimum of 120 degrees angle measure, and that the ratio of the weight height to the length has to have the ratio of 1:7. So we're going to play around with that. Basically, you could say the different financial measures for the ratio. You could look at the actual wavelength of the regression using the Lppls model. This peak right here has to have an angle measure of 120 degrees, right, to sustain itself. That's the idea as of right now. That's one of the ideas as of right now. And basically the timeline as of now is right here. I just wrote down the timeline that we have. First, it started with the education and research into these tools, because they're not necessarily, it all has to deal with stochastic calculus, but they're not necessarily stuff you get in a regular stochastic calculus course, except for the toroidal model. The toroidal model, I had to go in and basically educate myself on some of the physics and mechanics behind it, and then just getting comfortable with the mathematics behind the Hurst, and then how will it be used in the model. Same with the Lppls. And then the second timeline is formulating the actual model, right? So basically answering those first two questions is, how will it be used in the model, and how will it be able to improve the model for the Lppls, and then the Hurst is obviously using it, and formulating different models. So as of right now, we basically have 3 working models that we are going to try and implement. We haven't done any real work with them, but we've answered those first 2 questions. And then now we have to put the model together and test and code, and then develop training strategies on the models. So that is where we are at today. So over the course of the next year, we're going to be doing the real work. But as of now, the research is pretty good. We've knocked out all the research, knocked out the education part, and we've answered the most important questions: is what are we going to be using from these tools to then create the model? So that is where we are at today. Any questions?